This is the new Porsche 911 GT3. And before we go any further, yes, there is a manual gearbox option. This car has the PDK, but the 6-speed box from the 911R will be available should you desire 3 pedals. I mean, you didn't seriously think that Porsche was going to go to all the trouble of developing that gearbox just for the 911R, did you? But let's not get into that now, because there is more to this new car than just its gearbox. There's a 4-litre engine that revs to 9,000 RPM and puts out 493 brake horsepower. There's more aero. It'll hit 60 miles an hour in 3.4 seconds with PDK and go on to 198 miles an hour. There are pinstripes, for crying out loud. And there is no one better to tell us about all the details than Porsche's famous head of GT cars, Andreas Preuninger. Andreas, thank you so much for joining us again with
Henry, always a pleasure.
Brand new GT3, and hopefully you're going to talk us through sort of some of the stuff that we can perhaps sort of is below the skin.
Well, there's so much, so where do we start?
Should we start with?
If you look at the outer appearance, I mean, the car is really great looking. It really pleases the eye, which is very important for us. It has to work functionally, and it has to be beautiful. It has to be modern. It's very GT3-ish. I think it's a little bit more masculine than maybe the Gen 1 if you look at the front end. We got bigger coolers, bigger openings, and underneath, what you can see are the bigger coolers in the front. And on the back, totally different design as well. And we touched a lot of parts, but the most intense development was going on in areas that don't meet the eye at first glance. So it was the engine, it was the chassis, and it was the overall aerodynamical efficiency of the car, which is for a GT car, which is very important. When we were talking about the R, that was not as necessary, but this is a track car, so we concentrate a lot more on that. So after the distraction of making a driver's car a fun car, we turned back to our normal job and tried to make the car as fast as possible, and it was fun.
So aerodynamically then, we've got 20% more downforce.
We got 20% more downforce than the Gen 1 car, which puts us in the same league than the 997 GT3 RS second generation was, which is quite substantial. I mean, we're talking about roughly 160, 155 kilos of overall downforce at top speed, and at no coefficient drag penalty. So we have the absolute same coefficient drag than we had on the Gen 1, and being 20% more effective, more efficient, of having more downforce.
So that's obviously not from simply putting the wing further up into the air.
No, you can. There's a certain limit to what you can do with the front end and the rear end, because you have to fulfill worldwide laws. I mean, you cannot put a spoiler in 3-meter height or a spoiler lip protruding like a chin. I mean, this is just not possible. You have to be cleverer than that. So, and mostly the aerodynamical work on that car took place on the underbody. So we have different spoilers on the underbody of the car that accelerate the air towards a rear diffuser, which is now standard on a second generation GT3 as well, as a rear diffuser. And this helps a lot because there's in front of the wheels and behind the wheels, in the midsection of the car and underneath the car, there's this long vanes and channels that almost a channel-like paths for the air that work quite a lot. And if you look at the rear spoiler, it sits higher up, about 20 millimeters than on the Gen 1 car. It's farther back, and the trailing edge of the rear lid as well is farther back. So that generates more downforce without any coefficient drag penalty. And to find out these little things that you can do without harming other values of the car is a tedious work in the wind tunnel. And it was successful in that time. We're really proud on that. And talking about air touching the car, the ram air effect on the rear scoops that are very prominent, very sinister looking in this black. I like them. They're a lot more efficient than they have been before, because the air is hugging very, very closely to the rear window, and we could influence that by the trailing edge, the length of the trailing edge here. So they work in sync, the scoops and the rest that you can see here. And both scoops are guiding the air on a direct way to the throttle body without any kinks or bends, no internal resistance, efficiency. That's what we were looking for. And create a more subtle ram effect at higher speeds. So you can easily calculate that at top speed you get at least 20 horsepower more than on the dyno, which is substantial, which has in former times been an RS attribute in a way. So the GT3 has it as well.
Moving on to sort of elsewhere under the skin, obviously we have rear axle steering again.
Yes.
And you've got the helper springs now from the RS,
Yeah.
is that
So
right?
we have helper spring rear shocks. We have different dampers, different interiors, so the valves and everything is fine-tuned, and it works even with a lesser resistance. We try to get internal resistance out of the car, out of the dampers, out of the bushings, out of the gearbox, out of the engine. So that was what it was all about, looking for efficiency on the car, and happy with the result.
We'll come to the gearbox in a minute, because that's some people are going to ask about that. We know that's going to. We've got a lot of sort of black parts. I just want to talk on the styling. The styling is obviously, it's a subtle sort of evolution, but I think particularly the black parts, the back end plates there, and then I know you particularly, you're a fan of what you've done with the wheels.
If you look at the contrasting colors, normally an issue we only use on RSs. So there's a slight hint that is a little bit RS-ish on that thing, with this black underbody of the mirror, with this air blades in front, the side skirts, the side blades, and the scoops. Looks very good.
Yeah.
So.
And I know you've got the pinstripe here, which is kind of like a bit like a Ducati.
I don't like black wheels. Everybody knows that. But this is a new color. This is a matte black, so it's not a glossy black. And with the matte black, somehow the wheel comes out a little bit better. So the light gets caught in the different portions of the wheel. It makes it look very exciting. And I love the pinstripe. It's an option. Not everybody has to have it. So there's a lot of people, even colleagues of mine, that don't like it. I love it because you can see where the rim stops and the tire begins.
Demarcates that.
And it's kind of super bike-ish, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got obviously steel brakes on here, but carbons are an option, as always.
These are the standard 380 brakes, very similar to the ones we used in the Gen 1. This one have a little bit different caliper inside, so we have different brake pads, prone to less squealing, but still more aggressive on the track. And we have different piston settings in the caliper that we make sure that the brake pads are really off the rotor when you're not on the brake, not touching in a way. Resistance, efficiency. And that's the difference on the brakes. PCCB is available, the 410 and 390. Still something I like, because it's lighter and it's bigger and it looks good. But so there's not a huge difference here, just modifications.
And whilst we're on the wheels as well, we should obviously mention the tyres, because it's obviously
we're on the
evolution.
next spec, so we're with Michelin and with Dunlop, and both made a new tire for us, which is the next generation spec, which is a little better on dry performance, which is obvious a goal on a car like that. But on the other hand, the GT3 first generation was the biggest seller we ever had on a GT3. So many people use this car on road as well. And we still don't want to offer a normal street tire. We expect our ultra high performance tires ready for the daily use as well. So you can drive in the wet. You can drive when it's a little bit colder than 20 degrees. And they last quite long. So this very much counts for us. So we might be interested in the future to develop a tire solely for racing, or for having good lap times, for 3 good laps as well, like many others do. But our main target is to get the best package out of the tires and not look for the ultimate track time.
We're going to sit inside the car in a second, but just briefly, so we haven't got a magnesium roof. That's solely a...
This is solely an RS feature, so we don't want to mix these two cars too much, because the RS has its purpose, the GT3 has its purpose.
Likewise, obviously,
likewise on the screens.
But we have got the new type of plastic, I think.
We're using a new production process for the front and rear end, which makes it using a similar material. It's not carbon fiber, so it's very durable, like polyurethane, PU we call it. It's still PU, but it's more than 1 kilo lighter on each side of the car, without any other disadvantage. And which is our patent, which we are not giving away, and which helps to get the kilos down.
Yeah, perfect. let's go and have a sit inside the car and we'll talk about the engine.
You drive or me drive?
I'll drive.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So inside, first thing that I can see is the rev counter in there, 9,000 RPM.
Yeah, it looks very similar to the Gen 1s, does it?
But we've now got a 4-litre engine.
Yeah, now we've got a 4-litre engine that revs to 9,000, and the good news is it revs to 9,000 no matter if it has a PDK gearbox or a manual transmission.
And what have you done to the internals of the engine? This is not just a straight swap.
No. The engine was the main focus in development on that car, definitely by far, the whole drivetrain. So it's a new family, the new engine family that we use in racing. So the GT3 RSR that went very good in Daytona, I think, finished second, has this platform on engine. The GT3R has this platform that's a motorsport engine now. So we gather a lot of intelligence through by racing and through the experience on the track and through the development that goes on and on with the engine. And now it's the platform is really our motorsport platform, and we had to change some things on that car as well after the experiences on the track, and to make it fit as a homologation engine for the race series. So for instance, the crankshaft is not the same anymore. So we have a bigger crankshaft, which has a larger diameters on the main bearing, so it's stiffer and sturdier, and it's drilled. So the oil is fed to the conrod bearing through the crankshaft. By that way, you can decrease the oil pressure a little bit, and decreasing oil pressure means less internal resistance, more efficiency, and better cooling and better lubrication, and that works for a race car that has to have the capacity to sometimes maybe rev a lot more than 9,000 or maybe 5 digits, and so we have to make the engines fit for that. Can't hurt for the road. So and we've got different pistons, we got different piston rings, and we have got a different cylinder bore liner, which is a different material, very slippery, slick material in combination with this new rings. Friction reducing, less resistance again. We have the revolutionary point on the engine is more or less it's the valve train again. So we made the next step after the finger follower valve train that we had on the Gen 1. It still has finger followers, but we threw out the hydraulical valve adjusters. So this has really a rigid valve train, like in a race car engine or a race motorcycle engine. Wow. The downside normally on a rigid valve train is that you have to make valve leash adjustments, and which is quite tedious work, so you have to get the engine out, but not here. We're using technology that we are absolutely sure that within 300,000 kilometers, as long as the lifetime of the engines is, they will not change anything, so you don't have to touch it. And leaving away this hydraulical valve adjuster, you don't need the high oil pressure that they need to operate. So again, you can leave away some oil pressure lines, reduce the oil pressure even more, better for economy, better for power. And the resistance of the valve train as a whole went down by 20% or so. And the pressure between the rotating cam and the finger follower was reduced greatly. So the wear and tear is a lot less. And alone this modification on the valve train freed up another, let's say, 8 or 9 horsepower. Wow. So this was quite very efficient. But we're not done yet. So then we addressed the intake system. So we got a dual flapper intake system now, that we have not only one flapper like we had in the Gen 1, but a second bigger one that influences torque at mid and low RPMs very noticeably, significantly, making the car very snappy even at low rev. So if you take that car on around the corner and the engine speed drops to 2,000 RPM, don't worry. Just give it a kick and it goes. It's unbelievable, the range of operation of this engine and the bite it has. It is not only working below 9,000, it's really biting. It has so much torque all over. So if you look at the graphs for horsepower and for torque, and you take the graphs of the 3.8 liters, this is a quantum leap, definitely.
So you've got all that torque low down out and the response low down, but
you've still got
that amazing top end.
The top end is one of the things that the GT3 stands for. This manic, cry up from 7 to 9,000 RPMs, and everybody thinks, oh, wow, this sounds like racing. That sounds like that thing's coming apart, which is not. It's a nice sound, and it's this howling mechanical sound that people loved so much. That was at 7,500 onwards on the Gen 1. Now is from 6,200 onwards. So now the noise changed a little bit because the mechanical side of this valve train induces more noise in the cabin, but this is a mechanical noise that is pleasant, definitely. So it's got its own note, and engine works brilliantly. We're very proud of that.
Now we've obviously got the slightly smaller steering wheel, the 360 diminished steering wheel, and now I'm going to talk about the manual gearbox.
That's a PDK, by the way.
That's a PDK. So this is now offered with both PDK
so
and manual.
It's a non-cost option to go for manual. That was always what we were aiming for. We couldn't do it on the first generation, so we had to argue with everybody what was better. It was quite exhausting. But now we don't have to do it anymore because you can just check the box you like. If you want a car for track use, if you want to go every other weekend, fight the stopwatch at your local track, go for PDK, definitely. If you use the car maybe not on track, but as a daily commuter going through traffic, take the PDK. But if you want a driver's car, a fun car, take the manual.
Yeah, and it's the 6-speed manual that we saw in the 911R.
It's a 6-speed manual from the 911R. It has the same ratios than in the 911R. It features a dual mass flywheel instead of a single mass flywheel, because the new engine, the new crankshaft doesn't go together so well with a single mass flywheel. So nobody should please try it, because the main bearing, the outer bearing, which is adjacent to the flywheel, will suffer. We know that for sure. So that's not an option on that car. So that's the only drawback the stiff crankshaft has. But the light side on it is that even with a dual mass flywheel, the engine's so responsive and so snappy, nobody will miss it really.
Yeah. So, what do you say to the people that obviously sort of is this a 911R that's sort of in general production?
There's so much discussions going on about this. Let me say one thing: the 911R will always be a 911R. It's a very special car. We love it to bits. Best car we ever made. It was a project from the heart. Only 991 built. So the value, this crazy value the car has in the market, it will stay where it is. No matter if we offer a manual option now for the GT3, it's different. It's limited. It X-Works. It has all this lightweight gimmicks on it. Not gimmicks is negative word. This lightweight features, and it stands out. It feels different. But we encountered a niche in the market, a need for the driver's car. People were asking us, were begging us to make more of that kind. And the GT3 can do that. With a manual transmission, it becomes a driver's car. It's not so much a racetrack focused car. It's still great on a track, but it takes longer time to shift, but it's the emotions that come across are going the same direction as what we were addressing with the R, but it doesn't harm the R at all. So if people have a 911R, it's not endangered. And if you want to sell it now because it's got a manual gearbox in the GT3, call me. I'll take it to list because I didn't get one. So this is really not a point that should worry somebody. Yeah, definitely.
Andreas, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
So, as always with these second generation GT3s, this is evolution rather than revolution. But the engine in particular should be incredible, and I can't wait to hear it. With the option of a manual box, no doubt some 911R owners will be worried about residuals, but I'd like to think that most bought their Rs to drive, not as investments. In which case, they won't care. In some ways, I'm not even sure which will be the better box to have in this new GT3, PDK or manual. Something to decide when we get to drive it in a few months' time. I can't wait.